Hey everyone, welcome in. I'm Captivate, and I want to thank you all for watching and supporting the Ace video for this. As I mentioned in my previous video, I'm going to be doing this for all of the most popular matchups of the set, just giving you a breakdown on how to play them and a little bit of a rundown over those matchups. So today we have the Imu Mirror. Starting off, I'm just going to show an example deck list. I think this is more or less like the defined 50 for Imu at this point. Sometimes I think we're starting to see a shift where sometimes you'll play 3 Charlos over the 3 Miosgard. Just play 1 less 2k for the additional Charlos. Charlos is really good in the mirror for 2 reasons. One, he only costs 1 Don because you're going to be playing the 1 cost stage. And then also, he mills a card into your trash, which can often come up for the player going second, as well as you're often going to be sending 7Ks at each other, which is typically going to be 2 cards out of your hand. So it's really nice to be able to play 1 Don and get him on the board to block one of those 7K swings. So outside of that, really standard. We're playing 4 of all the elders, obviously, with for the 5 elders. This is a event that says after all these years I'm losing my edge, and what it does is if you have 10 or more in your trash, when you counter with it, it will give you plus 1k, and then if you have 10 or more, then you can get a 2k that, or a card that costs, I think it's 2 or less from your trash, so you can grab either the Miosgard or the Shirahoshi. So basically it's a plus 3k counter because this gives you plus 1k, and then you can grab one of these back and then immediately use it. Or if somebody swings 5k at you, then you can use this and then get a card back, so you don't actually lose any cards out of hand. So it comes up in the mirror because you are sending 5ks at each other fairly often throughout the early and mid game if you're able to find your searchers and get to 10 in trash. So we can start off, what is the game plan of the mirror? So I don't know if anyone is familiar with the Dofi mirror. This reminds me a lot about that because it's really fundamental and really basic gameplay. It's often like I compare it to a pre-release in a way, because you're basically just building these fairly generic boards and then swinging at each other's boards and then swinging at each other's face. So if you're good at pre-releases, you'll probably be pretty good at playing the mirror. The way that I like to think about it is the player going first and the player going second, they have 2 different roles. This kind of mimics the Dofi mirror, where the player going first is going to be the aggressor, looking to close out the game before it goes too long, and then the second player is more so going to try to be playing board control and survive and then live off of the value that being able to play the first 10 cost is going to give them. So as I mentioned, and then the stats will show that going second has an advantage, but it is obviously not unwinnable for the player going first. The way that I see it currently is if one of the 2 players is better than the other, they'll win almost every time. But if both players are equally skilled, the player going second is going to win a little bit more, because of the fact if the second player high rolls and sees like several Saturns, I think it's really hard for the player going first to be able to beat that player if they know how to play the mirror. Another game plan is we're generally just looking to develop as many bodies as we can while answering our opponent's board. This is a little bit of a slippery slope, because if you play board control the whole game and just swing everything at your opponent's board, you're gonna lose. So you have to figure out timings and figure out when they have rested bodies that you don't specifically need to kill. So if they have 3 rested bodies and you really need to push damage this turn, then you need to push the damage and ignore their board, knowing that their 10 cost elder is basically going to clear their board and then reset it. So if they are going into their 10 Don turn and have 3 rested bodies, and you can afford to take the damage of those 3 bodies, it would be better to ignore them, go face, and then have them basically clear them themselves by playing the 10 cost. But this is obviously very nuanced, and you'll learn it more as you play the mirror more. I want to just outline some rules of the mirror. These are really simple guidelines, and obviously they can be broken and are meant to be broken at times, but I think if you follow these rules, you'll get pretty far if you're not super familiar with playing the mirror yet. First one is, this is generally the basic rule of playing Imu, but counter out of any swing that requires 1 card. Often, the player going first and the player going second is looking to get to 7 in trash because Mars becomes unable to kill anything. But before you're at that 7 in trash threshold, and we'll talk about this a little bit more when we go over the curve of the player going first, before you get to that 7 in trash threshold, then Mars is able to KO your elders. So often, you need the math of if you're going first and you play 1 search, you need the math of one more counter card to get in trash to be able to reach the 7 threshold. But if you're already at the 7 threshold and you hit an early double search event as the player going second, and you already have 6 or 7 in trash and can get there with your leader effect, you want to just take the first hit so that we can see more options and have more cards in our hand. But outside of that, you really want to try to counter out of any swing that can give you, or that you can give one card for, because you are looking to stay a bit healthier. And as the game goes on, every single swing that they swing at you is going to be 7Ks when the Peter comes on board. This is a really important one. Counter trash before making any game actions. I've made this mistake way too often, specifically when playing on the sim, because it's a little bit harder to pay attention to your trash. But just get in the habit of counting your trash before doing anything that requires a threshold. So as I already mentioned, all of your elders need 7 in trash to become indestructible. Nostro specifically, the horse that gives minus 2k power, needs 10 in trash to give his minus 2k reduction. I've definitely made this mistake several times, especially if you're in low roll game and don't see any trash or any search events. And then typically you're already at 10 on your 7, 9, 8 on turn. But if you don't see those search events, you're not going to be that high yet. So definitely just count your trash and make sure that you have that. And then also Jupiter is another one that you do need to have 10 in trash to apply the buff to all of your characters. So there are times where you've used Shirahoshi or something like that and then gone under the threshold of 10. But general rule of thumb, just count your trash before making any game actions and save yourself the embarrassment of missing one of these. I mentioned this in the previous slide. Don't swing at bodies that don't need to die. This is really nuanced, but it's just get in the habit of trying to figure out when you can and can't swing at bodies, or when you can and don't need to swing at bodies. And this is especially true for Warcry, because when you kill Warcry, you're going to give them a draw. So basically what happens is if you have theoretically a 7k swing that can go at life and you send it into a sideways Warcry, they don't have to spend 2 cards to get out of the swing, because if you swung 7 at them, they would have to pay 2 or take a life. So in theory, we can say they have to give 2 cards to get out of the 7k swing. But if you send it at Warcry, you save them 2 cards, and then you also let them draw a card. So it's a net, like, gain of 3 cards for them. So just something to think about. Obviously, don't ignore their rested bodies, but you only need to kill them if they need to die so that they don't do too much damage to you. Another thing, Saturn, and the more you play the mirror, the more you'll see, Saturn is by far the most important card. The player that can go like Saturn on 3, double Saturn on 6, if you're going second, it's like Saturn on 4, Saturn on 6, you play 2 Saturns, because they only cost 3 because you're playing the 1 cost stage. Whoever does that typically wins. And this is also true of the player going first. If they go like Saturn on 3, Saturn on 5, double Saturn on 7, if they somehow see all 7, or all 4, they probably won. So when in your searchers and all of that, prioritize your Saturns, specifically outside of them drawing you a card, because they do draw you a card when you play it. They also let you search for the elders that you're missing, so it lets you just become more consistent and then less likely to play your 10 cost and then be missing one of your elders. So as I mentioned, there are 2 different roles, and this is the role of the player going first. You want to be the aggressor and apply as much pressure as possible. If both players play a very standard game where you're trading into board and you're just hitting them whenever you can, the player going second is going to win 95% of the time, because they generate so much value getting to play the 10 cost elder first. So the player going first effectively needs to not allow them to do that and try to close the game out as quickly as possible. You'll notice that some of the games when the player wins going first, they've basically won before their 10 on turn. They play a body on 3, potentially they Mars their body on 5. We'll talk about that once we get to the curve of going first. And then on 7, they can play 2 4-cost bodies for 6 Don. So now you have 4 bodies, and then on your 9 Don turn, you can play like a Jupiter. So now all 4 of these bodies you've been building are now 7k swings, and you can just apply a ton of pressure that way. That's really the best scenario for the player going first. But generally, you need to be looking for ways to just end the game as quickly as possible, because if you play 3 or 4 elders, the player going first is very rarely ever going to win those games. Then, as I mentioned, we do want to do a large push with Peter to apply a lot of pressure. And then if we can Mars the first body, it's a huge tempo swing for us. So now we can talk about the curve going first. This is the 1 cost stage. You cannot play the 7 cost stage because of the plus 4k event, which I don't have on screen, but if they pay 2 Don, they can KO your stage. So always play the 1 cost stage in the mirror. Don't make the mistake of letting them blow that up before your 10-don turn. So going first, we're going to want to search on our 1-don turn. On 3, we want to play one of our 4-cost bodies. Obviously, there is the possibility that we have not searched or we didn't find a 4-cost body, and if that happens, unfortunately, we've fallen pretty far behind because we missed the opportunity to play the first body. So we really want to be mulliganing and searching for one of these 4-cost bodies just to be able to get one on board. So after our 3-don turn, we'll go into 5. As I mentioned, Mars is going to be the best play, and the way that the math works out for the player going second, they have to do one of 2 things. They have to either see 2 search events before their 4-don turn or on their 4-don turn. They have to either double search on 2 or play a searcher on 2 and a searcher on 4 to double search to get to 7. Or they have to search once and then also play Charlos, because without Charlos, if they counter out of your swing, search once, they end up with 6 in trash using leader effect on their 2-don and their 4-don turn. So Charlos gets them to the threshold of 7 in trash, which is why I think he's really good in the mirror, outside of him just being able to block a 7k swing. But he is really good on the 4-don turn because on their 4-don turn, they leader effect to go to 6, and then they can play like a Saturn and then a Charlos on 4 because he only costs 1. So if they don't do one of those 2 things, they will be at less than 7, unless of course they hit search event trigger out of life. But if they are not at 7, you want to Mars every single time going first. Every time they don't have 7, Mars the body that they played on 4. If you can go body on 3 and then Mars on 5 and you KO their body and now you have 2, you've won. You've pretty much won. You will very rarely ever lose those games, unless you misplayed somewhere along the line. Getting 2 bodies out is a huge tempo swing. So this is obviously what we're going for, and the second player knows that you're going for that, so they're going to be mulliganing for searchers and ways to fill their trash, because it really is a big tempo swing. So if we cannot Mars, because oftentimes they will have the double search or the Charlos, because so many people are playing at least 2 if not 3 Charlos right now. So Charlos is really big, and then he just ups the consistency of them getting to 7 on that turn. So if we cannot play Mars, just leer effect them away. We're not going to play Mars anymore. What we're looking to do is 2 different plays. We either want to play Nostro standing for 5, and we don't want to swing with him. We want to leave him standing so that when they turn their board, we can punish them by swinging and then reducing it by 2. The horse is really important for dealing with each other's boards, because like I said in the slides, you don't want to waste big swings into board. But with a Nostro, what that means is you can play a Peter to buff the Nostro up to 7. So we can swing 7 at their leader while reducing one of their 5k characters, and then swing our 5k leader into their 3k body. And this comes up relatively often, where we swing 7 into them, ask for 2 cards, and then we swing our 5k leader into a 3k body, and then ask for 2 cards again. So basically just draining resources of our opponent is what we're looking to do. So those are typically what you're going to be doing on your 5-don turn. If you're not playing Nostro, you're going to do something like a 3-1-1, which equals 5. So this costs 3 with the stage, so we'll play either the Saturn or Warkery, and then play down a Charlos and then a search event. Just some combination of 3-1-1. It could be play him for 3, play a Charlos, and then leave a Dawn up for one of our counter events, if we want to defend the body that turned on our 3-don turn. Because if we play something on this turn and then we hold up a counter event, we could pretty safely turn this. You do typically want to swing with the body just to pressure them as much as you can. On our 7-don turn, because the player going second more than likely played double body on 6, we really want to try to answer their double body by playing 2 bodies of our own. And again, this is any combination of 4-cost characters. You either have the Saturn or the Warkery. The Saturn draws you a card to help you defend your board, and then the Warkery is going to draw you a card when it dies. So obviously Saturn is a bit better, but we really want to go double body here. And then, as I mentioned before, after we've built this board of characters, we do want to try to play Peter and then just jam them down with 7s as best as we can. With 9-don, this costs 6 with the stage, and then this costs 3, so we can do Peter Warkery on 9. Or we could do like Peter Charlos, hold up some amount of Dawn for counter events. So this is generally going to be your curve going first, or at least what you're looking to do. Oftentimes you will end up missing pieces, and then it's like, oh, on my 7-don turn, I really need to find this piece that I'm missing. So maybe I don't have 2 4-cost bodies, so I just have to play a Nostro on this turn. And then you just have to be flexible with what you're trying to do. And then once we hit 10, we typically want to just play our elders and use it. Anytime you have an elder and you can play it and don't die, just play the elder, use the elder. One thing that you actually can do because of the stage is we can play the elder on 9, and then we're not able to activate it, but we can get it on the board. The times when you would want to do this is if you're going second opponent. Generally, if they whiff something or just fall behind in board, and then you have the board advantage, you can play the elder. And what this does for you is if you play this on 9, you can basically have a turn where you use the elder and then cash in on all of the extra Dawn, if that makes sense. Because what happens is playing the 1-cost stage, we have to play this for 9 and then pay 1 to use it, which means we aren't able to leave any Dawn open. So we have to use, we pretty much just have to throw all of our counter events away. But if you play the elder on 9, you can spend a turn where you basically don't play another elder. You just pay 1 to use the elder, and then you end up with all this extra Dawn. So this can be really good if you're trying to keep your entire board alive or stay alive for another turn because you have 2 or 3 counter events in hand. That doesn't happen very often, just kind of wanted to put the idea in your head. And then as I do say in this slide, you do want to cycle pretty much every one of these away because you're really looking to defend your board in the mirror, not so much your life. And then these will often get clogged in your hand if you're not cycling them away. And then as I did say, once you get to 10, you're not going to be having any extra Dawn open. So once we get into the late game, we want our entire hand to be counter and none of these counter events. And you'll just find that they'll often clog your hand if you don't start cycling them away fairly early. So what is the role of the player going second? The second player looks to get a big advantage off of getting to be the first player to play 2 bodies on their 6th Dawn turn, as well as getting to play the first 10-cost elder, because you get the first 10 Dawn turn, meaning you get the first turn to play and activate your elder, which is a huge tempo advantage compared to them. Because what often happens, and I'll show this once we get into the breakdown of the turns for the player going second, is you build this big board, you play Peter on 8, and then if the player going first doesn't enter your board, then you still have this board of characters that you can swing 2 or 3 7s at them, and then you get another 7k swing with the Nustro that comes off of your elder that has rush that can reduce one of their bodies. So it's really hard for the player going first to keep their entire board if you kill their board and then have Nustro reducing something. So it can get out of hand pretty quickly, and then you kind of snowball this every turn by getting to draw off Saturn, getting to block with Warcry, and you get to do all of that a turn earlier than your opponent. This side is generally much easier to play than the player that's going first, because the player going first has to take some uncomfortable routes of just pushing face, ignoring your board, dealing damage, whereas this side is a lot easier of just like, oh, they have rested bodies, I'm going to clear those bodies because I will win the long game. So I'm just going to play the long game. I'm going to kill their bodies. I'm going to look to control the board as much as I can. That's really the role of the player going second compared to the player going first that is looking to be the aggressor and close the game out after 1 or 2 elders. You're really happy to just play your 3rd or 4th elder and just eke as much value out of them before you have to go for game. So this is the curve of the player going second. It very similar, and then you'll just notice that we get to do everything they get to do but 1 turn earlier for the breakpoints, if that makes sense. So on our 2 Dawn turn, I already mentioned it, but getting to 7 in trash is very important for Mars. Low-key, Mars will win or lose you the game. Oftentimes, whoever gets a Mars off, if you get a Mars off, as long as everything else goes according to plan, the player going first, if they Mars, will win a lot, and if they don't Mars, they fall a little bit behind. So our priority as the player going second really is going to be to get to 7 in trash. That mulligan for searchers, mulligan for Saturn. Saturn can find your search event. So if you play like a search event that doesn't find you anything else, but you find a Saturn, take the Saturn on 4. Oftentimes you can play Saturn to try and find you the search event because you really do want to get to 7 in trash. Outside of that, it's basically the same thing that we already said for going first. On 6, we look to play 2 bodies. This really is one of the biggest advantages of going second, is we get to play a body on 4, double body on 6. So now we have 3 bodies on board, and then we can play Peter on 8. So in theory, we have 3 7Ks we can swing on this 8 Dawn turn. If we can defend them all, then again, we have 4 7k swings, and then we play the Elder, and then we off of the Elder, we get to play the Nustro, which gets another swing. So outside of that, you're really just looking to play as flexibly as possible. If you don't see these curve pieces, just play whatever the best thing is. I will say personally, I think if you have the option between double body or playing a Mars, if the player going first isn't at 7 yet, it doesn't happen very often, but I think double body is better almost all the time, Personally, that's what I think. If you have a different opinion, you can let me know in the comments down below if you think playing Mars on that turn is better. But from what I've found, I think playing 2 bodies there is better than playing the Mars, because Mars is going to make you go -1 in hand as well. So basically you go, like, you match their board and then you get to get ahead that way. So I think playing 2 bodies is better there. But if you have a different opinion, definitely let me know. And then, as always, playing the horse is very, very good. But I do think if you're going to play the horse, you want to play it on this turn specifically, rather than your 6th on turn, because you're really looking to get ahead by playing 2 bodies. If you only play 1 body on this turn, you lose your advantage. At least you lose one of your advantages of going second. So I think you definitely want to do your best to find these 2 bodies here to play on this 6th on turn. And then, as always, Charlos is really good just to slap down whenever you have an extra Don. If you can play him on your 2 Don turn, search, play Charlos, and then play a 4 on this turn, or just slap down a Charlos on 8. That's pretty good. And then, as I said, you can just chain 10 cost elders from there. So I already went over this with the going first and going second curves, but what's a mulligan for? We are really, really looking for searchers to find our pieces, as well as get 7 cards in trash. Oftentimes, what I find happens in the mirror is there's a player that whiffs something, anything. They whiff an elder, and then they get to their 10 Don turn, and they play the 5 elders, and then they only bring out 4 elders, or they only bring out 3 elders. And the second that happens, you lose. So try to find your pieces that make your deck as consistent as possible. It happens way too often where they have an option to dig. If you have an option to dig, take the option to dig, because if you play a Saturn, and then Saturn finds you a piece that you need, let's just say you're missing a Mars. If you're only missing a Mars, take the Mars over anything else so that you can have that Elder for when you start playing the 10 costs. And then obviously you need to prioritize your curve pieces. So find your curve pieces, find your searchers, dig as deep as you can. Imu is a combo deck, so try to find your combo pieces and then play your combo pieces. So 4 cost bodies are really important. If I look at the curves, you can see our perfect curve for going second is 3 4 cost bodies. So find your 4 cost bodies, and this is 3 4 cost bodies by your 6th on turn. So you only have 3 turns for this. You only get 3 cycles, you only have so many search events. So try to find your 4 cost bodies. And then, as I did mention, Saturn is really, really important. He's kind of like the backbone of your consistency, being able to find you whatever and drawing you cards. So Saturn is really, really good there. So this is going to be the end of my little written guide. I'm going to have a gameplay of a game that I played in the Chinoy Cup. I've been playing in that pretty often. Definitely recommend anyone that can play in it to play in it. It's a little bit of an awkward time zone for people in the US, but I love playing in there. There's a lot of really good competition in there and a lot of really big names that play in it pretty frequently. So if you are looking to get better, I definitely recommend signing up and then playing in those events. They do it Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday every week. So definitely try them out, and I will let you all watch the gameplay that I have now. I want to thank you all for watching, and if you did enjoy this video, as always, comment and a subscription to me means so much to me, and it helps give me the encouragement to make more videos for all of you all. So I will catch you all in the next video, and I want to thank you again for watching, and I hope you enjoy the gameplay. Alright, so I'm going to do a little bit of a VOD review because I didn't do commentary over this game. This game that I played in the Chinoy Cup against Skip. And we did win the dice roll, so we are going second. I don't do these like VOD review type stuff super often, so hopefully this works for all of you. This is a fairly good hand, not perfect, but we do have the stage that we can cycle as well as a search event. I do think I'll probably speed this up just a little bit. So we can probably start at 1.5 or 2. So obviously we can just look to leader effect the stage away and then play our searcher. And you do always, whenever you're playing Imu, you always want to try to cycle before searching whenever possible. This is the same reason as Sakazuki, because basically when you're playing card games, you want to have the most information possible before making a decision. So you always want to cycle because it's going to be one card that you cannot determine or can't decide on before looking at like 3 or 5 if you play a Saturn. So you do always want to cycle before you search. He swings 7 at us here. This is a pretty easy take, and then we do luckily get a trigger here. If this was just a 5, because we don't yet have any other way to search, I think we probably do want to counter out of the 5. 2 reasons for that. One, we want to stay as healthy as possible as the player going second. So if it was a 5, I think we can just give the counter for it. And then also giving this counter would give us increased odds of finding a Charlos if we were to top deck a Charlos, or if we were to cycle into a Charlos if the Saturn didn't find us a search event, because we hadn't hit the trigger yet, so we had only searched once, so we would be at 3 in trash. So it's 3 with the search, 4 with leader effect, and then on our next turn, if he swings here and then we counter, we go to 5, and then leader effect gives us to 6. So it would just give us a better odds because we would have 2 outs to getting to 7. It's either Charlos or finding a search event off the Saturn. So we are already at 7 in trash. I think it's exactly 7. Yeah. So on this turn, we're going to look to cycle away. I think we'll probably cycle the Mars. Or actually, the counter event would be a good cycle as well. Yeah, so two reasons here for... I think this is probably the better cycle just to keep this in our hand, but we do have enough game left to play that it's not too detrimental to keep this in hand. And if he were to jam us again, like he did last turn, instead of going to 2, we could just use this event to stay healthy. So it is whatever. I don't think that's like the biggest decision in the world. So playing the Warcurry here, there is 2 reasons to play the Warcurry or the Saturn. Okay, this was a really long-winded answer, so I'm just going to break this down a little bit better. What we're doing here is I'm playing the Warcurry over the Saturn because I have the 4 cost for my next turn. If I didn't have the 4 cost for my next turn, I would want to play the Saturn looking for another 4 cost, knowing that I could either play 2 4 costs or the horse. We don't want to get in a situation where on 6 we play Saturn and then end up whiffing another 4 cost body, and then now we have this 3 Dawn we can't use. So playing Saturn on this turn would allow me to look for a body next turn, but because I already have the 2 4 costs, I can just plan to play them next turn. If I didn't have the 4 costs, I would want to play Saturn this turn to look for it next turn, and if I didn't find it, I would want to play Nostro. So this is a pretty easy 1k. Yeah, and we have the double body here that we're going to be playing next turn, so we can just get rid of the Nostro because we have our next turns mapped. It's like this is 6, this is 8, so... Actually, there could have been an argument to just use the event here, which I think I do, on this 5k swing. Just give a card to get out of it, because this is going to be dead later, and I want to use all of these, so fairly happy to just give that, even though it does like waste counter. Yeah, we are testing the barrier here, so we can just cycle that away because we already have one of the +4 events. Yeah, and we do want to swing with our bodies whenever possible. He, if I remember right, was not at 10 in trash yet, and couldn't get to 10 in trash unless he used an event. I don't remember exactly how many he had in trash, but you definitely do want to be aware that, like, the Nostro, once they get to 10, can kind of just delete this. But if they do, then we get the card draw. So it's like we trade this for 1, he kills this, lets us draw a card, saves us a card because he didn't swing at us. And then on my 6th on turn, I played the Saturn, looking specifically for another Saturn, because we already have all 5 Elders, so being able to chain these Saturns and just get the card draw off of those is better than just playing out the Warcurry there. Okay, so he swings this 5 here. I should definitely check his trash and see if it's going to get reduced by the Nostro. Yeah, and then either way, I think it's fine to just let that die, because I give 1 card for the leader swing into it, and then he does kill it with Nostro. But if I were to just let this die, there's a possibility he sends a 7 at me with Nostro, and then I have to take the damage there. So it's just give 1 card for it and then make him turn the Nostro. And that is another reason that if I just let this die, he could potentially leave the Nostro standing, and we want to make him turn his board. So right now I actually have 2 decisions. We could play the Peter and we could play Nostro. They showed us that they searched a +4k event off the Saturn last turn, so we know they have +4k and we know they have Charlos. So if I were to play Peter on this turn, I play Peter for 6, I can play the Charlos, and then I can leave a Dawn up. So that means it's 6 for Peter. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, meaning we have 2 Dawn left. So basically I can swing 5, 7, 7. And if I swing 5, 7, 7 into him here, they counter 1k, give the event for a 7, and then block for the other 7. So one of the things that I thought was better to do on this turn specifically was to play the Nostro just so I can kill their Nostro. So if I play the Nostro down, he gets reduced to a 3, which means I can swing this 5, this 5, this 5, this 5 into a 3, meaning this Nostro dies for sure, and then we can just push board here, knowing that we can play the Charlos and we can leave up the counter event, meaning that we can block both of these swings, assuming they play Peter next turn. So we can clear this body, push damage face, and then play the Charlos and leave the counter event up, meaning we should be able to defend our entire board, again meaning that we can push these bodies into either face or their own bodies. Because we are the player going second, we do want to try and chain our elders as best as we can. And then this should set us up nicely going into our 10 Dawn turn. So we don't end up getting to push any damage with buffing these to 7s with Peter, but this is kind of the flexibility you want to have. This just seemed like a better play, getting rid of this body, and then now we can ask for 3 cards out of their hand with these characters that get to swing. And then here we can just go 5, 5, 6, and then play down the Charlos, and then leave up 1 for the counter event. Yep, gives us a 2k there, and then plays down the Charlos. Charlos is so good in this matchup because now if they play Peter, we just completely get to negate one of their attacks. So we should be able to keep our entire board here. And then something nicely is if we can keep the Nostro alive, it means that we can reduce their Saturn, and then just means that they won't get another 7k swing on their next turn, assuming they play Peter on this turn. Alright, so he does swing 7 into it. Not super sure what he's planning on playing here. It could be a Peter because he still has 7, so it's probably a Peter. Yeah, and then he buffs these up to 7, so 7 into 5. I can kind of make the decision on if I want to give 2 cards here for this. I'm not sure if it's right to give 2 cards here, but I knew I would get to keep it alive with the Never Existed. And then I would get to reduce the Saturn, so I can make sure that dies. And then now, so we're on our 10 Dawn turn with 3 life, and typically if you get to this spot with elders in hand as the player going second, you've won. If they haven't done enough damage to you, you're going to be able to snowball the game enough to a point where you can kind of just close it out. So now they have Arrested Warcry, and this is kind of one of the things that I was talking about in the slides, where we can just ignore the Warcry. We don't need to kill it. So we can just push damage here, ask for cards out of his hand, and you can see he already has only 2 cards in hand and then 2 life. So pretty easy. Just leader affect our body before we play the 10 cost. Yeah, so now we could take a 2k or we could take another 10 cost, and because we have 3 life, we're at the point where we can just chain 10 cost and slowly win the game. And then here you see I used the Mars to KO the Charlos, so he actually doesn't get any value out of that. And then now, because the Warcry is going to be a 7k swing, I think it would probably be fine for me to just leave it alive, but because it's either 5 at life where he just gives me 1 card, or 5 at the Warcry, making sure that he doesn't ask me for 2 because the Warcry is a 7. I think it's pretty easy to just swing into the Warcry there and clear it because it was reduced with the Nostro. So this happens a lot where you send the Nostro face because it's 7 face, reducing one of their rested bodies, and then you just send your 5k leader into the rested body. One of the things that you do want to be aware of when doing that is if they have a blocker, they can obviously just block 1k if the blocker is not reduced. But yeah, at this point, we have 2 elders in hand. We have, 3 life, so we're in a pretty good spot. And then always, whenever you're kind of going through your elder chains, you do want to look to block one of the 7s with Warcry fairly early. just because you don't want them to get to a point where they swing like 1/7 at you with one of their leftover rests or one of their leftover bodies, and then they don't end up swinging their Nostro at you, and then you end up just losing the value of Warcry. So yeah, this is actually a point where I don't think I left it standing, but I could have pretty easily just left this Nostro standing so that the Warcry wasn't able to get them the card draw. But we're at a point where like we've already won this game. So yeah, I think it's all right there. And then we kind of just mitigate one of their additional attacks that way. But I think it probably would have been better for me to just leave the Nostro standing if I didn't die to them trying to swing out by not giving them the additional card draw off of the Warcry there. Because they can only leader effect one body, so and then their 10 cost is going to clear them. So we do get the win there. This is obviously going second, seeing a fairly good curve, so this is kind of just an example game for you. Yeah. So what likely would have happened there if he had another 10 cost was just swing these. You could just block with Warcry. If I really wanted to, I could block with Mars and kind of just continue to generate value by not having to give them cards, staying at a high life total, drawing cards every turn. And then whenever I run out of my last Elder, so play like one more turn, and then I can just keep all of these guys alive and then push for game. And when we push for game, we want to have as many Nostros in hand as possible, as well as make any possible swing an 8. Because you can see if I swing an 8, I like destroy his hand. This goes to 7 and then 8, 9. So it's like 3 cards out of hand for this 8. And this often happens. So you really want to make your swing out as many 8s as possible. You want to make as many swings as possible, and then you want to make as many 8s as possible. So I hope this was a pretty good example game for you all. I'll have lots of mirrors coming up soon. Basically, Imu and Ace are the only 2 decks being played on ranked right now, I feel like, and then some Zoro. So I'll have a lot more games for you all to watch soon. I just want to thank you all for watching the video, and I hope you did enjoy this guide, and I hope you were able to learn something from it.